do we know how to create abstractions? Do we really understand how to reuse anything at all? Like, when do we even need to reuse anything at all? Because every usage of something is usually slightly different.
Hello, welcome to devtools-fm. This is a podcast about developers and this is a podcast about dev tools and the people who make them. I'm Andrew, and this is my co-host Justin.
Hey everyone. We're really excited to have Oleg and Bogdan on with us. Y'all are working on a product called Webstudio, which I feel like is going to be a really exciting episode. I've been really interested in tools in this space for a long time. So I'm very eager to dig in more and talk about what you are building. But before we start, we'd like to hear more about you. So Oleg, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Hey, nice to be here. And I don't even know where to start because Webstudio is such a big topic that encompasses the entire, website creation space, which is on itself like a giant topic. So yeah, let's see where we can get with this.
Yeah, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit more about like your past and sort of like what you've worked on and how you got to this point?
Oh yeah, sure. So I've been a developer, mostly front-end developer for my entire career. And at some point, about 2.5 years ago, I decided to start the company, which is Webstudio. And yeah, I've been working on some tools. One of those is Webflow. It was one of those companies that they had like huge impact on how I think about the entire web development, but also it changed my career entirely. And part of the reason why I built this company or started this company was me working at Webflow and then realizing what else can be done in this space. Where are we actually, and why are we not better than this?
Bogdan, would you like to give an intro too?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Bogdan. I've been doing open source like 11 years already. I started as a post-CSS contributor. I liked CSS and I needed tooling to work with it. And I've been a maintainer of post-CSS for a while. I've been maintainer of Rollup, SVGO. But now I focus primarily on Webstudio. It's a very cool project. I like the idea of bringing designers and developers together, bringing this old webmasters thing back.
I call this Vibe Masters today.
Cool, let's get into it a little bit. So Webstudio seems like a very big product. You had a path that led you here. Could you tell us about what took you from Webflow to another company to finally go, I want to solve this problem with Webstudio?
So originally, I didn't plan to start Webstudio when I was at Webflow. I like the idea of making something as complicated as, the visual builder. It's just doubting, it's just a lot of work and it still is. And it's kind of, I never planned this to happen, but the ideas kept me kind of like thinking, what if we did this? What if we fix real-time collaboration like Figma did? What if we actually stick to the web platform fundamentals when we try, to create UI around HTML, CSS? What if we stop, abstracting away the platform and just make it more accessible, but still keep it, really close to the bare metal? What if we make it really fast? Like, things, there is so much stuff that we developers are doing, and we do this over and over again. And it's kind of like, it's weird, because everyone is building websites and most of them are still bad. And how is this happening? Like, why is that? So that kept me bothering, and I decided to, try and do something. And I built a small prototype within a few months, launched it on Product Hunt. And a few investors contacted me, and I raised pre-seed money to start this company. So that was essentially like, two things together. Me still wondering, can we do better? And actually doing something about it, and then, getting off the ground.
So Webflow is obviously a big contender in this space, but there are a lot of other sort of like visual site builders. Uh, so the category is both broad and a little crowded. So when you were thinking about this problem, what were the things that you saw as like gaps in the market that you really wanted to bring with Web Studio?
The thing is, if you compare the size of the market, not even the size of the market, the size of the audience that is using these tools, it's kind of tiny in comparison to, let's say, WordPress. And that shows kind of like where Webflow is in comparison to the global market. And then if you think about it, what is the reason why that? So of course, WordPress is very old and like it has had a lot of time to get this level of awareness. But fundamentally, I think it's first of all open source aspect of it, because like visual development has been and still is a different paradigm. It's a shift, and it's kind of it's a big shift from Wix type of tools where you can't just build really complex professional websites, and then it's also different to normal web development where you have to code everything and there is cost to it, there is complexity to it. So visual development was something entirely new, and I was thinking like, will it stay like a super niche thing, or can it become mainstream? And in my mind, the only way to make it mainstream is being open source, and that is the core foundational reason to start something like this. But then at the same time, I think there is a chance to build a better tool if we build it not as a proprietary closed sourced type of platform, because simply the amount of input you can get from everyone in the world is it should be life changing. It should be actually life changing for any product.
Have you guys seen good support from the open source community? Like, have you had random people adding features to your product?
Not random features. Well, there's been some attempts to kind of like build a feature and like come out of nowhere. But usually I would say even in the entire open source space, code is not the most important aspect. The problem statement is the ability for someone to express their problem, define exactly why they have this problem, discuss the solution, and collaboratively come up with something that works. That is kind of like the thing that is completely missing in any closed source platform. Code doesn't matter. I mean, you can rewrite or implement anything relatively quickly. This is not a bottleneck.
I got a question before we sort of like dig into the specifics of Web Studio. So you started this around early 2023 ish. Well, that was the like why Web Studio, why now blog post. Like AI was like starting to kick up, but like it didn't really reach its sort of like the hype level that it is today. And the sort of momentum of the industry feels like it's shifted. So there's a lot more people, there's sort of this meme where like every startup now is like a chat box, and they're like trying to auto generate everything from that. So it's like, as you're in today's market and you're looking at, all of these like chatbot box companies, how do you think about like visual builder tools in this space, and how do you think about like positioning Web Studio in the like age of AI?
Yeah, AI has changed quite a few things for us. We started originally not even in 2023. We started in mid 2022, where AI has not been on our radar whatsoever. And as we launched in mid 2023 the beta version of Web Studio, AI has been the only thing everyone was talking about. The problem also was, and still actually is, how people talk about AI, what they assume it can or cannot do, and when. Because of that, it's difficult to kind of like build something and raise more money or hire more people when everyone is thinking, oh, in 6 months, nobody's going to be visually developing anything. In 12 months, we're not going to have developers at all. And of course, we have been, proven that all of this is wrong. Nothing is completely changing, but things are changing in certain way. For example, this chat interface that you're talking about. And essentially, it's not even the. I think, like, ultimately, I don't know why we are using the chat interface, because, we are talking way faster. Why are we not mostly using sound interface? I don't know. But essentially, in that, this is just the input mechanism. You want to be able to talk to LLM, right? And depending on what LLM can do, actually, that becomes essentially the main entry point for any application. That's just the input mechanism. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, on the last episode we had on Adam Argyle, and he had a very interesting view of what websites might be in the future, where instead of us working on assets like in Webstudio or even in your code editor, you're more have a prompt that is your product, and your product is a output of that prompt. And then rather than working on the product at all, you just kind of craft and hone what your product is and what your ideals are around having UI, and you don't actually care about the details. And I don't know if that's the future, but that seems like the natural foregone conclusion of, oh, chat's the best interface and this textual interface is the best for
I think this is
websites.
the maximalist thinking, as if the same thing with test driven. You remember days of TDD, where every developer thought that the only way to do things is to write test first. And it's not a bad idea on itself, but there is so much more than just defining some feature on a higher level. It's just the 10% of everything that the software is doing. It's just a start. It's just a start. That's what it is. It's essentially the scaffolding of the application, and then the actual work can begin. And then, if you think about what applications generally do and why are they so expensive and difficult to build, then you realize the most money is spent on fixing bugs and scaling systems. It's not defining the feature. It's not even building the feature. It's fixing all the things that go wrong with that feature, or removing that feature in the end because it was the wrong one to build in the first place. And that's where we spend 90% of the time. How much time do you spend really implementing a certain feature, especially if you don't have a lot of technical debt to clean up? In my estimate, it's 10%, 5%.
So let's talk about some of the actual features of Webstudio. So one of the things that sort of jumped out to me is y'all think about design tokens instead of CSS classes. So anyone who's worked in an organization that's using design system, design tokens may be a familiar term, but what was the shift there, and why are you thinking more of in terms of design tokens over CSS classes?
CSS has fundamentally one flaw, and I've been trying to fix this for my entire career, starting with some of the earliest, most popular approaches to this was the CSS and JS library called JSS, which was me trying to fix CSS at the time where we had no CSS variables. We had a lot of other features not in place, which were really making our lives difficult. And the core problem with CSS is the CSS specificity algorithm that makes it hard at scale. And at scale, I don't mean 100 people. I mean just a larger growing application. So in a visual development, it's no different. If you start building on top of the very same abstraction, if you start using the same class system, you will end up with the same type of issues with specificity, but even worse, because now you don't only have the specificity issues, you also have a UI that potentially doesn't directly explain what the problem is. It hides a lot of stuff that we developers know how to dig out from code or from the browser. But then if you talk about visual development environment, it's not going to be representing what's happening with CSS. So design tokens have been essentially, it's mixins, or actually it was inspired not by mixins. At the time it wasn't even a thing. At the time, I was looking at the spec. It's called design tokens. It's kind of like a draft that is not supposed to be used by anyone yet. But the idea is essentially it's like classes, and every class can have a single or multiple properties. So it's a class, but the composition model doesn't rely on selectors. So you basically have a bunch of classes, you put them together, you separate them, you use them, you mix and match them as you want. Same thing is in mixin, and that mixin is actually going to be in the standard. So essentially, I fixed the specificity issue simply by not having, class-based composition, even though the mental model is exactly the same. It's like you have a name, and to this name is a bunch of properties and values attached. That's all you need to know, and then you can put them together. You see how they combine. You see how they merge, and you never have to experience any conflicts that are completely out of the blue. You see all the conflicts right up front.
Interesting. So it seems like you have some parts of like what developers might consider a design system. You also have a Radix UI integration, which brings like all of the accessible type components to the editor. One thing that seemed to be missing though was components themselves. So like if I wanted to make a reusable popover that I have everywhere, is that something you guys plan
definitely
on
need
doing?
components. The thing is, we just never got to build them. There is so much stuff that we have been trying to solve that we never actually got to the components itself. Right now, if you want to reuse something, you create like you can easily reuse the styling information, but you can't reuse the structure. So you are basically recreating the structure. But on the other hand, we built a giant website. I mean, it's not a giant website, but it's pretty reasonably big website, Webstudio itself, like the Webstudio.is. And we didn't have much trouble. And we have a lot of users who build relatively complex large websites, and they also don't have a lot of trouble. So sometimes, and we internally also discuss it, like once in a few weeks it comes up, like the whole discussion around components and reusability and all that jazz. It's like, yes, we came from React's world. We came to think that we need something that we can parameterize and reuse and everything in a way that React components are reusable. But reality is that most of the time, the moment you start reusing some component, it becomes your abstraction. And the moment it becomes your abstraction, you start using it in different places, it becomes difficult to maintain. And that in that moment, you start, for every extra usage and extra use case, you start adding more parameters. It starts becoming really difficult to understand what's going on. You start breaking things just simply because you don't know all the things that are using this component and how they're using it. And this is the concept that, like, we as developers who professionally write code for decades, we are struggling with making this kind of like work. We add tests on top of this. We try to make things very semantically correct. We spend a lot of time maintaining semantics and all of this just to make sense of everything. In the end, it's still like hit and miss. It's difficult. It works to some degree, and then it doesn't. So sometimes we are wondering, like, do we know how to create abstractions? Do we really understand how to reuse anything at all? Like, when do we even need to reuse anything at all? Because every usage of something is usually slightly different. And then you start with parameterization, etc. And the new tendency, especially with the mindset of AI, is actually copy pasting a bunch of HTML with a bunch of styles and adapting it to the use case that you need it to. And this is kind of like a little bit wild, unexplored approach to web development that I see happening more and more today. Actually pioneered by Tailwind, because simply Tailwind was not really reusable styles, but more like a reduced set of styles that you copy paste all over the place. And I was so turned off by this fact. I was never a fan of Tailwind, actually. I always hated this fact, because, like, my programmer mind needs a component. My programmer mind needs to reuse everything, every bit. I still fight my team on this. Like I am the guy who wants to reuse it, and they don't want to reuse it anymore. They just want to have it copied over, make it work, and maybe some tiny bits and pieces, like variables here and there, like some configurations here and there, that are definitely not going to change, getting reused. So with this in mind, I still think we will need some version of components for visual development as well. I'm at this point where I'm not quite sure how this should work, because components, especially building them visually, is a quite messy and complex topic. Like using them in code is not easy, but using them visually is not going to be easier either. It might be actually even harder, because you have to define the interface, everything that gets in. You have to define how this component composes other things inside of it, what is allowed, what is not allowed. You have to define the slots, things that you can throw into that component from the outside. You have to decide what properties from the component can be forwarded down to other components. And then, like, this is only the visual part. This is only building this thing to make it look the way you want. What about the logic? What if you want the parent component to communicate to the child, and then child communicate back to the parent? What if some property in the parent changes that affects the child, and then the child changes something that affects the parent? So we developers, like the entire React ecosystem, is struggling with this. Like child parent communication in React is messy. You have to like, if you don't use libraries for that, you have to pass functions, mutate values, call the callbacks back to the parent, make the parent do something. This is a very messy thing to do. So I'm not sure what's the right approach for visual development to actually have both visual systems, like visual bits, snippets, reusable, but also logic that is attached to them and everything composes.
It's interesting that like you guys have found like a lot of runway with like the classic web approach, where it's like you've divorced the markup from the styling, and that makes everything a lot more flexible. And like you're kind of saying, like components are an abstraction that we've used as developers to like conquer that complexity, but that doesn't really make all that much it only adds more complexity though when you're in a visual tool, and it's adding this like extra layer of like API and having to know things, whereas just knowing the primitives gets you very, very far.
It does. What if we, in order to reuse some sort of markup, we didn't have to use component? What if it would be referenceable in some way that is just give me that snippet and that's it? Svelte is actually another example where they didn't take the traditional approach to components, even though they have still a notion of properties and state and parent-child component, but they also solved all the other aspects, like allowing the child component to have bidirectional binding for property between child and parent automatically, so that like you connect these two properties and they are always in sync. You don't need to build this manually. Or how the styling works in Svelte components. Like they have thought about it in a little bit different way. They don't have a component itself that you are defining. The module is your component essentially. And it has HTML, it has potentially CSS, and it has the logic in the script tag that kind of like decides the behavior of your representational layer. But in a sense of React, there is no components. Like they exist, but they are purely conceptual model. It's like it's more like a pattern than an actual component. Maybe that's what we need in the development.
It's interesting that Svelte has the notion of a snippet now as like a first class thing of way of like a non-component way of like sharing like templated stuff. But also to this point, it's like kind of interesting too that there's a lot of design tools that take this track too. So I remember like Sketch back in the day, the Mac app that a lot of designers were using. It didn't really have like componentized like a componentized pattern for like a long time. It was like a thing that like it took them a while to like figure out like what the pattern for that is, and it does seem like a sort of a challenge in this space for sure. So Bogdan, would like to give you a chance to talk. I'm curious about like how your experience in the open source and the tooling space, especially like working on things like Post CSS, how has that influenced how you approach working on a product like Webstudio, and what are the kinds of things that you've been able to bring to the product?
The most important thing is such product is data, which represents the state of the application of website. It's basically an AST, abstracted syntax tree of everything. Our compiler directly translates it into code. You get React application. In Builder, it translates into runtime code, which reactively changes when user changes something in the project. One thing I figured while working on this project is we don't need complex parsers or code generation tools. We just can iterate over abstract syntax tree and generate code with strings. Like we don't need complex libraries like Babel. We can use this to generate any code for any framework. It can be React, it can be Svelte. Eventually, we will make more communication between developers and designers by designers to use code from developers and developers to use some components designed in Webstudio.
That reminds me actually the reason why these tools exist in general. It's actually the like if you think about it, the core of this matter, what we are trying to solve with all of these tools is the designer developer collaboration, because it's never been solved. It's still not solved today. And the core reason is simply that the gap between the ways of working for designers and ways for working for developers is just so different. And we have been trying to solve this with so many different, approaches, starting with, at least some part of the design should be like tokens encoded in some JSON and is synchronized into the design system and code. It doesn't work. Or it works, but creates so much more work that you ask yourself if it was even worth it in the end. Because we tried, we actually the first version of the builder was built using this approach. We were trying to synchronize the tokens in Figma and design. Like the entire interface was built at Figma. Everything was tokenized, and then the tokens were synchronized in the builder. We still use this because we haven't migrated away from there is just no solution to this. And in the end, this is a madness. Like building complex UI in this approach is just mad expensive. It's just too much work because you start encoding every little thing, every little color, every little space into the token system, and then you have to maintain it in places in both in Figma and where it's used. And then there is still so much stuff that comes on top of it that you can change those things, but they might break something else, and it's just not worth it. Like the attempt of trying to solve the designer developer collaboration by having some kind of like protocol between the tools. It's just this protocol is just a subset of everything that needs to be done, and this is probably like 1% of everything that needs to be done. So I think ultimately the only solution to this, if we ever as humanity are going to solve the designer developer collaboration, is to have a single tool or single place where both of them can operate. And that's what everyone, and I literally mean every tool that is meant for complex things like Webflow and even Framer and Webstudio. This is all we are trying to solve, actually.
Yeah, I think designing and developing in the same place has a lot of merit to it. One feature that I saw from you guys that seems like nice for that is the way you guys do semantic elements. I used Webflow with my wife one time, and I was just so surprised at how much I had to know as a non-developer to like make a website and make it look good and make it right. Can you or Bogdan go into like a little bit about how the element works in Webstudio and how that helps people make semantic websites?
Bogdan, take this one because the mastermind behind it. We started initially with components and with the React thinking, like sort of there is a component for every single thing, and then it's a high level abstraction, and then something is happening under the hood. But then we realized with AI, it's going to be difficult because generally AI doesn't know your components, it knows HTML. And you want to be able to generate something with AI, bring it into Webstudio. And this is where Bogdan came up with the element.
We recently added a new element component, which basically gives you an ability to create HTML elements. Main idea was to give very low level control for visual designers to let them specify any heading levels, any paragraphs, not abstract too much. So generated code can be the same as intended originally. The same goes with the AI, which can manipulate any existing HTML elements, but it cannot know our abstractions. But idea to just rely on something that exists in the wild. One important thing here in HTML element is content model, which I basically parsed from HTML specification. There is an indexes table, which shows which element can be in which parent. I just scraped it, built a list of rules for Webstudio, and now it can warn you when you put something incorrect. There is a tag property which shows only tags which you can use within context. For example, list item can be put only inside of lists, unordered list, numeric list, or menu tag. And backward, when you try to change tag on parent, it will not let you use, for example, paragraph because it knows what children it has. So it let us enforce semantic HTML for users. It shows only specific attributes for this element, and in the future we will introduce accessibility tree awareness, so it will be additional layer to validate what the user builds.
I think the fundamental thinking here is that if we are using components that we made on top of the web platform, we are working sort of against the web platform. Yes, we can make nice components. Yes, they can do a lot of stuff. But fundamentally, every month, every year, web platform comes up with new things. Now, there is a huge amount of work being done in CSS, in HTML, the popover API, the, what is it called, Bogdan? What is it called? The triggers
Invokers.
we can have.
Invoker commands.
Invokers. Yeah, exactly. And all those things are kind of like HTML and CSS is slowly catching up to the requirements of the real world, or the things that we used to do with custom code. And all those custom abstractions that we like to be building as developers are actually going to be, like, in a year, a bunch of legacy code that you don't want to have. So our idea is actually to rethink how we are moving forward and get back to what HTML and CSS is trying to accomplish and get out of the way. So with this element, it's kind of like a context-aware element abstraction that allows you to use any element in the right place with the right attributes and tells you when you are wrong. And it's kind of like weird because as a developer, if you write HTML, I almost guarantee you that none of us can write fully compliant, valid HTML without looking it up. Like, I'm looking up constantly things that I can or cannot use. Like today, I had to look up if I can use a header element inside of a dialog element. It seems logical that you could use header, but no, you can't. It's not for this. And stuff like this happens all the time. And weirdly, in this visual kind of constrained environment, you're actually easier. You can easier see what can be used and what can't, because it just tells you right away.
One thing that I wanted to dig into really quickly, which is a bit of a divergent from this topic. So both in the call out post of like why Webflow, why now, and just sort of on your documentation site, you call out Cloudflare as a very specific enabler to like what you're building, and you put a lot of emphasis on it. When a lot of other times, people may be building on Cloudflare but don't mention it as much. So why is it important to you to call it out? Like, what is it that Cloudflare is giving you that you think is sort of a differentiator?
I think the biggest feature or like infrastructure that got me thinking that Cloudflare is the god is workers. They did two very important things. They made them super cheap and distributed across the globe and isolated, like little tiny machines that live in 270 locations across the globe, and nobody else has this quite like that. And if you think about it, what do you want from a website? You want it to be really fast anywhere in the world, and you want it to be able to load dynamic data and still be fast. And that's what you can do with workers plus the caching. Because essentially bringing down infrastructure cost to near zero and making it really, really fast, isn't this what everyone wants for a website? We could have done this with classical CDN, but then it would be only static website. You can't build a seriously big website without having ability to call APIs, having ability to cache. Cloudflare is just making it work really well with the storage, with the storage which is S3 compatible but doesn't have the egress cost, with the CDN that is like one of the best in the world, with workers, with Kiwi caching. It feels like they are the only ones who really built the platform for this. And sure, there is like gazillions way of doing this, but Cloudflare is really doing some things right.
So before we start wrapping up, we touched on it a little bit at the start of the episode, but AI has changed a whole lot. How you integrate AI in a product there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. As we already discussed, people love to put chat boxes into everything. But how are you guys approaching it and integrating AI into your tool and not making it feel like just something pinned on top?
We did the wrong type of integration in 2023, and we just thought, okay, ChatGPT 4 is out, it's crazy, we even need to implement it, and we did it. But then it was very useless because it was able to do basic things, but you can't rely on anything. It's difficult to understand what it's doing. It's kind of like we're building a professional tool where you want to be able to control every aspect of your build. But then you have to figure out a way for have like a controlled approach for everything. So we removed it. We removed it entirely just recently, and for I know like 3, 4, 5 months now, we are working on a new thing that is called Inception. Inception is not a replacement for the builder. Inception is a design tool, and Inception is built from the ground up for using LLMs and other models as well. And the core idea in there is essentially combining a designer canvas, like Figma style canvas, where you have many frames, ability to see many different versions of things at the same time, experiment, branch off. And essentially, we intentionally don't have any design controls like Figma has. The tool is really simple. It's chat. It's chat interface on top of a designer canvas. And the idea is essentially to be able to generate a lot of ideas, experiment a lot with all sorts of directions using AI on a canvas that is specifically designed for experimentation. And then instead of having a picture of what you have created, having an actual code, which is HTML and Tailwind, which like we are specifically using LLM, so it is thinking in Tailwind, essentially. It is designing everything in Tailwind. There is no abstraction, there is no translation between what you built with your rectangles and what is actually possible. It's a web canvas. And then essentially you start experimenting there. You can build the entire design, you can build some sections, and then you can copy it over to either builder because Builder now supports pasting HTML and Tailwind. You can copy from anywhere essentially and paste it into the Builder. It will also download all the assets and store them. But you can also take the same thing, the same approach, and get the code from Inception and continue building in the Builder. You see exactly what you're pasting. There is no side effects. There is full control. You can change everything you see on Canvas because that's the Builder kind of like fundamental idea that you can control everything and you can go to production. So we kind of like, we are trying to combine the two worlds using two separate tools that work together really well.
It seems like your tool has a lot of very like nice UX features to like facilitate that transformation. So like just being able to copy and paste a HTML with Tailwind in the tool, that's pretty cool. I also saw that you can just like paste CSS properties into the sidebar, and since it's all just web, it just uses all those properties. Are there any other like cool little UX web platform features that you have on the platform?
A lot of them. I would say our fundamental thinking is you should be able to, take anything from any website, copy it and paste it into Webstudio. The only thing that you right now, like, you can just take any CSS with random, really complicated selectors and paste it, because that would defeat the purpose. Someone would have to untangle the complexity. So essentially, we try to we essentially support, as far as I know, we support the entirety of CSS just without the selectors. You can paste the entire any CSS block, any type of declaration. You can paste HTML. You can do essentially anything you can do with HTML and CSS, and that opens quite a bit of possibilities. But then we provide the interface that allows, at least with certain level of awareness of how HTML and CSS works, a way for designers to also interact with all of this. They don't need to be opening some code-based project where an unreasonable amount of code is written in random places and you have to find your way through this. It's an easier way to work for designers. That's I think this is the main idea. And by the way, Inception is kind of not made. I mean, I think designers will also like to explore it and experiment with it, but Inception is essentially made more for developers and product managers and people around digital products, because essentially we made Inception in a way creative, because we essentially try to figure out ways to make LLMs creative, so that you don't have to. So when you enter a prompt, you can say something that is relatively simple. Make me a hero section for a coffee shop website, and it will come up with interesting concepts. Of course, the more context you add, the more interesting the design will be. But generally, you don't need to be the designer to use it. You can add extra context, extra info, but you don't need to. And we do everything around it so that you can start generating a lot of different ideas without having full designer context. The one thing that you need to have is taste. In the end, someone has to decide what is good and what is not good, and you will be having like tens of variants and versions of everything. So you have to decide.
Since we support CSS variables, they can be copied from Figma or Pempot and pasted directly into the root and used across whole project. It's a good feature to share with designers' values and build based on this design system.
Well, that wraps it up for our questions this week, guys. Thanks for coming on. You guys have built a very powerful tool, and the fact that the whole builder is open source is incredible. So thanks for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And yeah, it's such a cool tool, and we're excited to see how it develops in the future.